Well, hi, all of you. I am Bud Saxberg, or actually, I am Börje Saxberg, and I am originally from Finland, a Swedish-speaking Finn, given the two official languages, and I am a professor of management and organization at the Foster School of Business at University of Washington. I actually recently retired, and I'm trying to get used to that. And might add that I have been teaching here at University of Washington for 52 years in the areas of management and organization. Well, my home city is Helsinki, or Helsingfors, as it is known in Swedish, and so my home language was Swedish, but I had a wise mother, so she put us kids in Finnish-speaking play schools so that we got the Finnish base for what is after all the language of the majority. And then I had the chance to move on to a very successful high school in Helsinki, and I think I was a great disappointment to all my teachers when I chose to go to the business school, nowadays known as Hanken in Helsinki. But I had, seen my father creating his own transport business, and my mother was his bookkeeper and did the accounting. And I had been a very busy seller of Christmas publications at Christmas time, made money, and I just kind of felt that business was a good place for me. And so I finished my first bachelor's degree then in accounting. So you never know what's going to happen to you. And then eventually, of course, it was a question of work. Where will you have your career? And first we decided that, well, Norway wasn't right for me. And my wife said, well, Finland isn't right for me. So we decided, let's make Seattle our compromise. And so, a couple of years. That was 53 years ago. What we had in Scandinavia before AIESEC was something called Praxis. And this was a cooperative kind of activity between the business schools in the Scandinavian countries, including Finland. And we had exchange arrangements, and then after World War II, it was just a feeling that somehow we needed to get hold of a way of gaining fluency in the big commercial languages. And that's when we had a first sort of preliminary meeting in 1948 in Sweden, and I think it was actually in Stockholm, where the Stockholm Business School kind of provided leadership. And then we went officially back 1949, now as delegates with authorization from our respective student organizations to actually negotiate how we might set up an organization that we then referred to as the AIESEC organization. And again, the French acronym was, of course, a reflection of the fact that the French group was very strong. And at the same time, we saw it as a real advantage if we could just get into France and Belgium and United Kingdom. And so we had delegates from those countries, and in the process the arrangements were made that we would in effect set up an exchange mechanism where we were going to be collecting job opportunities in our respective home countries, and then come together for purposes of an exchange where we essentially were trying to match the jobs we had and students who were interested in traineeships, essentially meant for the summer months. And so, so that was how we met in getting ready for 1950, and had a wonderful occasion in Paris. You know, I mean, AIESEC has always felt like you need to have fun in addition to being serious. So, you know, I still remember how we were at dances and dinners and met interesting people, and it kind of just sort of was something special after still World War II being in our memories in a way as having been a pretty awkward time. Well, you know, this was very interesting that like France in particular was of course a very sensitive one, because they had very high requirements before they were willing to give a work permit. And so I remember sitting outside bureaucratic offices waiting to get the right kind of a paper with the right kind of a stamp and so on. But I think what you find is that once students are involved, and it is legitimate, that students get a very good hearing. Whether it is visiting presidents of companies who got their own kids who never talk with them, and so here is a chance to have an AIESEC student who really is a student and ask him, so what is it like today to be a student? What do you think about? And as a result, the most amazing doors are open when you say you are a student. And in most cases, I think it's very strange for a student to be told that he's going to sell AIESEC to the president of this company. You know, you have to overcome all of the thresholds that say, well, I don't know enough to be representing neither my family nor myself nor AIESEC, and I'm supposed to sell AIESEC to this guy who is the president of this organization. But he is just completely interested in, and if you have asked for 15 minutes, the likelihood is that you will start wondering, how will I get out of here, because I've been here now for an hour. So I think that has been the general reaction to students who have been interested in gaining a hearing. Now, our chapter here in Seattle, it had its ups and downs, as obviously any student chapter has, because students come, there's a crescendo, then they all graduate, and then it's a question, how do you restart, you know, and another crescendo, and then it disappears. And we found that we had a number of students who were in other areas, you know, say in English, say in the Jackson School of International Business, say in architecture, and they had an interest in potentially having an opportunity to have an internship. And so we found that we needed really to expand our base for membership, because the business school until a year ago took in students for their 2 last years, juniors and seniors. And it just turned out that that was a bit too narrow a base on which to have a really reliable membership. And so by expanding it beyond business school students, we had perhaps a more interesting group, and at the same time more students in the pool from which to see leadership coming out. It probably has to do with having patience and recognize that your career is going to be a lot dependent on how you establish your relationships, because even though you may be a very strong competence in a specialized area, and you might even have a lot of proof of that, it still turns out that in in an organizational context, it's just like living in a tribal community, that it becomes a question of to what degree are you successful in making other people willing to support you. And that is frequently a real challenge, because we are frequently impatient, and we think that, you know, if the world is rational, they should recognize what we are capable of. But of course, it's always a question of whose rationality is the one to govern, and so it's within that context that relationships really become very, very important. I think in both cases you are just different when you come back home, because you have been out on your own, you have made decisions on your own, you have discovered that you can exist by yourself, and as a result you handle yourself totally different. Well, it's just like the fact today is that anybody can actually travel somewhat inexpensively and go off to another country and be a tourist and come back and have, you know, great pictures and stories. But to be an AIESEC trainee is to really be enjoying what the French call a super vacances, that you have a base, and from that base you are looking at your kind of local area, and you have a chance to really become involved and get to know people and get to see how they live and how they think. And that's a different experience than being a tourist who is doing the grand tour, you know, one day in each city or something like that. And so when I think of my own traineeship in Paris, it was a fantastic thing, you know, because you know, basically, of course, my fluency was very poor, you know, because you have to have the exposure to spoken language environment. But they were as friendly as they could be, and then in the process you suddenly realize that you are looking at different ways of dealing with the business organization. I had been, you know, for many summers I'd worked in a company in Finland, the Finland Steamship Company. I returned every summer, and I got a bigger job every summer, you know. And so I had really sort of a base on which to look at what was going on at Petrol Tonlin, which was my employer in Paris. And you know, just like seeing, you know, in the morning the president comes in, and there are others waiting for the elevator, but they all let him go in by himself, you know, and then he closes the door and then he goes up and I'm standing there. Gee, you know, we could all have fit in. You know, I'm supposed to. Or in a way, you know, to have lunch with wine between 12 and 2. And so all the work has to be done before 12 o'clock, because after 2, well, it's a happy environment that you go back to. And so, again, something new. And so this notion of having a base and then work in that environment, getting to know people, getting friends. And I remember, I have none.
That works too.
Yeah, this is of course the unique thing about AIESEC, that AIESEC has always been really a creation by students for students, and therefore it has always maintained a certain degree of independence, which means that advisors are more for purposes of, you know, providing authorization of having office space or